Dear Chosen One, they had no idea what they were really doing when they came for you. They didn't realize they weren't just poking at a person, they were provoking the current of the universe itself. And now, that current is crashing through everything they built, and there's no off switch. They should have backed off the moment the air shifted. They should have left the room when the silence got heavy. But instead, they kept poking, they kept pushing, they kept trying to drag your spirit into their chaos. And now, everything they set in motion is circling back like a boomerang they never thought they'd have to catch. The mouths that laughed at your silence, they're stuck on mute. The people who mocked your peace, now they're begging for it. What they thought was just a game against you, turns out they were pulling the tail of something ancient, holy, and untouchable. And now they're facing consequences not from you, but from a divine system that never forgets who it protects. And before we dive deeper, I just want to say thank you, truly, for all of you who've been supporting this channel through Super Thanks. I see you. I'm deeply grateful. Your love keeps this message moving. And even if you've never given a single cent, just the fact that you're here, listening, sharing, growing, that means more than you know. You're part of something that's shaking the ground beneath the illusion. So thank you. Now listen closely, Chosen One. This was never just about you. This was about them pulling against the universal law and not even realizing it. You weren't reacting. You were resonating. You weren't breaking. You were recalibrating. And while they thought they were isolating you, what they were actually doing was setting themselves up for a fall they didn't see coming. Have you ever questioned yourself after being pushed out? Wondered if maybe you were too sensitive, too intense, too intuitive? That wasn't delusion. That was divine insight. You were reading what they were too afraid to admit. You weren't crazy. You were clear, and clarity can feel like a curse when you're surrounded by people who thrive in confusion. Stop doubting your power just because they couldn't handle the weight of it. Your isolation wasn't exile, it was insulation. While they were playing checkers with egos, gossip and manipulation, the universe was moving in silence, setting the chessboard. And now the pieces are falling exactly where your spirit always felt they would. Let me be clear, everyone involved is feeling it now. The liars, the enablers, the ones who watched you suffer and clapped for it in secret. They didn't just cross you. They came against a force they didn't understand. And now they're facing that same force in ways they can't pray away, lie away, or talk their way out of. And you're still standing, not bitter, not broken, aligned. And that's what's haunting them. Not your anger, not your revenge, but your elevation. The fact that you're still here while their masks are melting, while their relationships are crumbling, while the system they use to cover their chaos is collapsing under its own weight. So stand in that, not with pride, but with peace, not with arrogance, but with awareness, because they thought they could destroy you. But what they didn't realize, you were never the weak link. You were the signal. If this message is already hitting your spirit, do one thing: like, subscribe, and drop 999 in the comments. That number is more than just digits. It's divine confirmation. It signals to this platform and to the universe that you feel the shift, that you know exactly who this message is for. Because if you've ever been the target of manipulation, silence, betrayal, and now you're watching the system that came against you start to crumble, this is your confirmation. This isn't random. This is divine alignment. Let's go deeper now, because the more we break this down, the louder the truth gets. Stay locked in, Chosen One. God's chosen ones, everyone involved, is getting calmer, wishing they had just left you alone. Number one, they poked the quiet one and triggered the whole system. Chosen one, they underestimated you. They mistook your silence for surrender, your stillness for submission. But in doing so, they awakened something they never should have touched. You weren't just another person walking quietly through chaos. You were the tripwire God placed in plain sight, ready to activate when injustice reached its boiling point. And when they stepped on it, they didn't just offend you, they disrupted a divine balance. Have you ever wondered why your presence alone seems to shake rooms? Why even when you speak softly the atmosphere changes? That's because you weren't placed here just to survive. You were planted here to signal a shift. What they did wasn't personal. It was spiritual interference. And now the universe, heaven itself, is correcting every vibration they distorted. Not with rage, with precision. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Psalm 9:9. They didn't realize you were stamped by God, marked before birth. They targeted you thinking they could get away with it, that they'd win some shallow ego war by isolating you, mocking you, or spreading lies. But what if I told you they weren't just messing with your emotions, they were tampering with sacred alignment? And now, the cord they snapped is recoiling with force, and it's wrapping around them. Take a look at the life of Chadwick Boseman, quiet, deeply spiritual, moving in silence while the world underestimated the weight he carried. While he battled illness privately, people mocked his weight loss. But little did they know, his silence was strength, and his legacy would outlive their laughter. Just like you, chosen one, he was the still force carrying divine assignment. And once the curtain lifted, it was too late for apologies. You see, karma isn't petty. Karma is mathematical. When someone targets a chosen one, the universe doesn't panic. It recalibrates. It collects every lie, every betrayal, every smug grin, and stores it like receipts. And then it pays them back with interest. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. Galatians 6:7. They thought they won because you didn't fight back, because you stayed quiet, because you walked away. But the silence wasn't surrender. It was set up. It was the stillness before the flood. The system you're connected to doesn't roar. It whispers, and then it moves mountains. And now, every scheme they built is crumbling under the weight of its own falsehood. Look at Colin Kaepernick, labeled, rejected, ridiculed, all for taking a silent knee. But his silence triggered a movement. It forced conversations. It exposed systems. They thought they were silencing him, but they amplified a signal. What they tried to shut down became unstoppable. Sound familiar? And chosen one, let's speak truth. There was a moment when even you doubted, when you looked in the mirror and asked yourself, did I imagine all this? Was I just being too sensitive? But that confusion wasn't weakness. It was the weight of being a vessel, one that had to hold what others couldn't handle. You weren't wrong. You were righteous. And heaven knew exactly what it was doing when it let you sit in that stillness. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. Now the tables have turned. The very ones who laughed at your downfall are watching their foundations crack. The ones who whispered lies now have truth shouting over them. The silence they mistook as defeat. It's echoing now. In courtrooms, in friendships, in mental breakdowns, in collapsing reputations. The storm is here. And they've got front row seats, just like Britney Spears, who for years was painted as unstable while the world watched in mockery. But when the truth came out, when the manipulation was exposed, The silence she'd endured became a roar that led to a global number-free Britney movement. What once looked like defeat was actually divine setup. Don't forget this. You were the mirror they feared, not because you tried to expose them, but because your very presence reflected what they couldn't fake. They tried to project their brokenness onto you, but all they did was peel the veil off their own delusion. And now, the same hands that threw stones are scrambling to catch falling bricks from the collapse they created. Vengeance is mine, and recompense for the time when their foot shall slip, for the day of their calamity is at hand. Deuteronomy 32:35. And if you're still asking, why me? Here's the divine truth. Because you were strong enough to carry what they could never endure. You didn't wear power like a performance. You wore it like a mantle, and the universe honors that kind of integrity. You weren't chosen to be liked. You were chosen to be effective. Think of Princess Diana, hunted by press, misunderstood by royalty, yet loved by people across the globe. They tried to silence her through shame, yet her truth, her compassion, and her legacy became louder than ever. After they'd tried to break her. That's the same anointing on your life, chosen one. The kind that outlasts betrayal. So don't shrink back. Don't apologize for the protection on your life. You didn't lose friends. You lost liabilities. You didn't suffer in vain. You became a channel for justice. You weren't delayed. You were being divinely positioned. And now, as the system rebalances itself, let every echo of their deception collapse under truth. Let every ounce of peace stolen from you be repaid tenfold. You don't need to announce your comeback. It's already in motion. They didn't just poke the quiet one. They activated divine judgment. And now the system is answering, loudly, righteously, and completely. Number 2. They laughed at the warning. Now they're crying through the wreckage. Chosen one, do you remember when they laughed? When your truth became their entertainment? When your insight, sharp, divinely tuned, and filled with precision, was twisted into a joke? They didn't just mock your words, they mocked your discernment. They turned your spiritual clarity into a punchline to protect their comfort. But comfort doesn't last when built on denial. And now, the joke has collapsed. And the punchline? It's dragging everything they built down with it. Have you ever noticed how loud people get when they're trying to drown out the truth? They laughed, not because you were wrong, but because your awareness scared them. Because when someone walks into a room carrying the kind of energy that sees through things, it makes people who depend on illusion very uncomfortable. So they tried to dismiss you. They rolled their eyes, whispered in circles, made you the topic of their group chats. But now the very things they dismissed are setting fire to their reality. For nothing is hidden that will not be made manifest, nor is anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. Look at what happened to Edward Snowden. They mocked his initial warnings, called him paranoid, dramatic, even unpatriotic. But over time, every piece of his insight became undeniable truth. And by then, the ones who laughed had already helped build the very structure that was now turning against them. Like you, he wasn't trying to destroy, he was trying to reveal. But the revelation came with consequences, because warnings aren't always welcomed, especially when they cut too deep. And chosen one, let's not rewrite history. They didn't just ignore you, they ridiculed you, labeled you too intense, too serious, always seeing too much. They called it overthinking, fear-mongering, drama. But now, those same people are wide awake in the middle of the very chaos you described, unable to sleep, spiraling in confusion, unsure how to move forward. Why? Because every word you spoke is now unfolding like a prophecy they laughed at too soon. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. Proverbs 11:2. Think about Greta Thunberg. For years, world leaders and media figures scoffed at her urgency. They belittled her warnings about climate change, mocked her age, her emotions, her passion. But now, the floods are here. The fires are real. And the silence from those same critics is louder than ever. She wasn't being dramatic. She was being clear. And just like you, her warning wasn't about control. It was about care. But arrogance couldn't hear it. Let me ask you something. How many times did you hold your tongue, trying not to overreact? How often did you swallow your intuition to keep the peace? You felt the tension in your spirit, but everyone around you smiled and said, "Relax." And now that peace they faked is breaking, and they're standing in the rubble of their own dismissal. Meanwhile, you're still here, grounded, focused, unbothered, because you were never crazy. You were correct. They didn't just ignore a person, they ignored a signal. And chosen ones aren't just people with opinions, they are vessels with purpose. When a chosen one gives a warning, it's not out of ego, it's out of spiritual alignment. You weren't trying to control the outcome, you were trying to prepare people for the truth they were pretending not to see. But instead of listening, they laughed, and now the laughter has turned into silence. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Proverbs 27:12. Take Anthony Bourdain, for instance. He often spoke of the emotional toll that fame, global travel, and deep cultural awareness placed on his soul. Many shrugged it off as artistic temperament, but behind his wit and culinary brilliance was a man bearing invisible weight. And when the world lost him, they began to revisit his words. That's the tragedy. Warnings often sound like noise to people who don't want to hear them. And now, those same people who mocked you are haunted, not by you, but by how right you were. They remember every pause in your voice, every time you tried to offer insight with love, every time your energy shifted, when you sensed something brewing. And they dismissed it all. But here's the catch. The universe never wastes truth. It simply stores it until it's time to unfold. And the time, it's now. He who has ears, let him hear. Matthew 11:15. Look at the story of Jeanine Cummins, the author of American Dirt. While praised early on, many warned about the lack of authentic representation in her storytelling. Those warnings were ignored until public backlash shattered the book's reputation. Again, someone tried to discredit truth-tellers. But truth doesn't die, it just waits. So, chosen one, you've got to stop apologizing for being right. You've got to stop editing your voice because it disrupts illusions. They didn't mock you because you lacked clarity. They mocked you because your clarity made them confront things they weren't ready to see. But confrontation is part of the awakening, and they're in it now, whether they admit it or not. This is not punishment. This is alignment. This is what happens when ego outweighs humility, when laughter drowns out discernment, when people try to silence warnings because they expose too much. And you don't need to say, "I told you so." Your silence is doing that work for you. Your stillness is louder than ever. So what's next for you? You rise, you build, you keep moving in your clarity, not as a reaction to their failure, but as a reflection of your purpose. Let them stumble through their own chaos. You did what you were called to do. You spoke up, you warned them, you stayed aligned. And now your voice, the same one they mocked, is the echo following them everywhere they go. Let them cry through the wreckage. Let them sit with the cost of their arrogance, because this isn't revenge, it's rhythm. This isn't pettiness, it's prophecy. And chosen one, you were never the unstable one. You were the accurate one, early, clear, and called. Number 3. Karma wasn't late. It was dressing for the funeral. Chosen one, there's something sacred about your silence. It wasn't a retreat, it was a reset. And while they danced on your absence like it was a victory parade, karma was backstage, not rushing, not reacting, but preparing. Because karma doesn't show up when you want it to. It arrives when they've convinced themselves they've gotten away with everything. That's when the universe decides it's time. Not out of revenge, but out of divine justice. Let me ask you this. Have you ever seen someone smile too wide too early, as if the story has already ended? That's what they did. They celebrated in the middle of the first act, not knowing the climax was still coming. They mistook your exit for defeat, your silence for surrender, and your peace for permission. But chosen ones don't stay silent because they're scared. They stay silent because they trust a higher court. A court that doesn't operate on gossip or group chats. A court that writes final chapters with full clarity. The Lord works righteousness and justice for all who are oppressed. Psalm 103 verse 6. Think of Brittany Griner, who was detained overseas, ridiculed, underestimated, and left in uncertainty. But in the silence of those days, pressure built. And in time, justice moved. Not loudly, but forcefully. Her release wasn't the result of noise. It was the result of unseen power moving behind closed doors. And so it is with you, chosen one. You didn't shout. You stepped back, and heaven stepped in. You see, while they were busy rewriting the narrative, karma was gathering every receipt. While they painted you as unstable, karma was stitching together a pattern so undeniable that even their strongest excuses would unravel. They thought karma missed them, but karma was never lost. It was choosing its wardrobe, robes of truth, gloves of exposure, shoes laced with precision. And now, it's walking into their life like an uninvited guest, to a party they threw on the grave of your dignity. And what's most ironic, they had time, they had space, they had moments when they could have made it right, cleaned up what they smeared, apologized before it escalated, but they didn't. They doubled down, mocked more, lied better, smiled wider. And now the explosion they thought would never come is shaking the very ground they stood on so proudly. They dig a deep pit to trap others, then fall into it themselves. Psalm 7:15. Let's talk about Megan Fox, a woman misunderstood for years, called crazy for speaking on spiritual and energetic truths. She was mocked not just by media, but by people around her who couldn't comprehend her frequency. And yet, as time passed, many of her strange beliefs turned out to be accurate. She didn't fight back with fire. She watched the world come back around to her truth. That's you. You've been watching, waiting, letting truth do the talking. Chosen one, here's a deeper layer. Karma isn't emotional, it's mathematical. It's not interested in performance, pity, or PR. It deals in balance. When someone causes an imbalance by attacking a soul protected by divine alignment, the universe doesn't scream. It recalibrates, quietly, precisely. And when the system completes the equation, the solution is always one thing: consequence. Have you ever felt a moment when your spirit said, "It's not over"? That's not paranoia. That's divine intelligence tapping you on the shoulder. While they threw dirt on your name, heaven was planting you deeper. While they laughed, angels were recording. And while they pretended the fire wasn't real, they were dancing on top of a gas leak. And now they're choking in the smoke. God is just. He will pay back trouble to those who trouble you. 2 Thessalonians 1:6. Think of Tiger Woods, once praised, then publicly humiliated. His silence was taken as defeat. But behind the scenes, he rebuilt, quietly, powerfully. And when he returned, it wasn't for applause. It was proof that karma isn't final, it's refining. He didn't beg for image repair. He became the repair. Like you didn't need to defend yourself. You became the evidence. Chosen one, do not mistake your elevation for isolation. You weren't cast out, you were carved out. Removed, not because you were weak, but because the blast radius was too low for someone carrying a purpose this high. You thought you were forgotten, but heaven was just making space, because what they built was too shallow to bury you, and too fragile to handle the weight of your truth. And now, they're unraveling, and the most haunting part for them isn't what's happening, it's remembering your voice, the tone you used, the calmness that held too much clarity, the silence that followed their betrayal. That silence wasn't void. It was charged. It was the air pulling back before the thunder hits. Whoever sows injustice will reap calamity, and the rod of his fury will fail. Proverbs 22:8. Look at Johnny Depp, once painted as the villain without trial, silenced, mocked, abandoned, but eventually the silence turned into evidence, and the evidence turned into restoration. The people who laughed first were the ones who had to eat their words last, because truth has a rhythm, and rhythm always catches up. So, chosen one, hear this now, and hear it clearly. You don't have to clear your name. Your alignment is already doing it for you. You don't have to show receipts. The system kept the records. You don't need to rehearse the pain. It's being rewritten into power. Stay focused, stay clean, stay elevated. They thought karma was absent, but it wasn't. It was dressing for a funeral, not yours, but for the death of every illusion they tried to keep alive, suited in silence, polished with truth, arriving late, but always on time. And the most terrifying part for them, it's just getting started. Number 4, they wanted you to break. Now they're the ones cracking. Chosen one, let's not sugarcoat it. They didn't just stumble into your pain. This wasn't a case of immaturity, misunderstanding, or poor communication. No, this was targeted, calculated, intentionally cruel. They saw your light and decided they'd rather snuff it out than let it shine. And when they couldn't break you with kindness, they switched to strategy. They made your pain a storyline, your struggles a spectacle, and your name a casual punchline. But now, the spectacle is turning inward. The light they tried to dim is exposing every crack in their own foundation. And while you're standing strong, maybe even glowing, they're trembling under the weight of the mask they built to mock you. Let's ask the hard question. Why were they so committed to seeing you fall? Why did they need you to fail so badly? Because your very existence challenged their illusion. Your grace threatened their control. Your endurance made their insecurity tremble. So they projected, they smeared, they made your resilience look like arrogance and your discernment look like delusion. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 50:20. Think of Serena Williams, dominant, composed, fiercely focused, yet she's faced more attacks than most athletes, called emotional for showing passion, penalized unfairly, made a caricature of in media. They wanted to rattle her into silence to make her second-guess her fire, but she didn't bend, she didn't break, and now she stands tall, not only as a legend but as the storm they tried to outlast. That's you, chosen one. They threw storms at you and expected you to drown. Instead, you learned how to breathe underwater. They wanted you to unravel publicly so they could nod with satisfaction and say, "See? We were right." But you didn't give them that satisfaction. You didn't react. You refined. You didn't collapse. You clarified. Do you remember how they watched you like entertainment? The subtle digs, the fake concern, the group chats built around your downfall. They didn't just want to hurt your feelings, they wanted to destroy your credibility, one whispered rumor at a time. They wanted you labeled as dramatic, unstable, a problem. Because if they could distort how others saw you, they wouldn't have to deal with how your truth exposed their lies. But they never expected that silence could be this loud, that your refusal to participate in the chaos would become the one thing they couldn't spin. And now, they're unraveling under the very spotlight they built for you. So do not fear them, for nothing is concealed that will not be revealed, or hidden that will not be made known. Matthew 10:26. Look at Janet Mock, the trailblazing author and director who rose in a world that tried to dismiss and define her. Every step she took was scrutinized, criticized, whispered about. People labeled her too bold, too political, too much. But with time, her truth stood taller than their fear. She built a legacy while they drowned in their projections. And like you, she didn't have to scream her worth, she became it. And chosen one, let's not pretend it didn't hurt. There were nights you sat in silence wondering, am I really the problem? You carried the weight of doubt not because you lacked truth, but because the world around you tried to convince you your sensitivity was weakness. But now you see that sensitivity was your superpower. You weren't fragile, you were finely tuned. And now, the energy you held in grace is echoing back in justice. Let's be clear, they're not confused by the consequences, they're haunted by them. Every lie they told now walks into the room before they do. Every half-truth they whispered is looping in their mind like a broken chorus. And the silence they once used as cover, it's become unbearable. Because silence speaks loudest when it's no longer on your side. The wicked flee, though no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. Proverbs 28:1. Consider Brendan Fraser, who was blacklisted for years after speaking out about abuse. The industry cast him out, mocked him, tried to erase his story. But what they didn't realize is that divine timing doesn't rush. And when it returned, it brought with it restoration, not just for him, but for everyone who had ever been disbelieved. He didn't retaliate. He waited. And now he's standing on ground that almost broke him. Redeemed, not ruined. They wanted you humiliated, but you were purified. They wanted you isolated, but you were insulated by divine grace. The platform they tried to bury you under has become the foundation you're standing on. You're no longer in the same room they tried to discredit you in. You're building somewhere higher, out of reach, out of range, unavailable. And now they're cracking. Slowly, publicly, tragically. The same people who once laughed at your stillness are fumbling for peace they can't find, because it was never you who was unstable. It was them all along, performing certainty while carrying chaos. The masks are slipping, and they don't have a backup plan. You don't need to clap back. Your composure is the collapse. You don't need to explain yourself. Your alignment is the answer, and you don't need to break your silence to prove anything. Your peace is doing the talking. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Psalm 46:1. Think of Gabriel Union, who's faced a lifetime of rejection, dismissal, and professional sabotage, but she stayed grounded. She stayed open, and eventually her story flipped, not because she fought harder, but because truth works over time when left undisturbed. She was pushed out of rooms that couldn't handle her strength, and in doing so, she was ushered into rooms they couldn't enter. Chosen one, let this be your reminder. You didn't fail when you walked away. You were rescued. The destruction they tried to hand you was redirected, and now it's circling their life like a storm they called on themselves. The pressure they designed for you has become the pressure that's crushing them. And the most poetic part, you're not even looking back, you're free. And if any part of you is still wondering, why did it have to go this way? Understand this. What was meant to break you was allowed to touch you, only so it could reveal what was unbreakable within you. They built an entire false narrative around your pain, thinking it would ruin you. Instead, it revealed them. So walk tall, without apology, without bitterness, without guilt. You didn't get lucky, you got delivered, and what's unraveling now isn't your story, it's theirs. Let them hold the pieces. Let them try to tape together the image they destroyed with their own hands. You don't owe them clarity. You don't owe them closure. You owe yourself continuation. Because you didn't break, you became the evidence. Number 5. The thought of you being chosen haunts them at night. Chosen one, they'll never admit it out loud, but you haunt them. Not because you sought revenge, not because you tried to destroy their image or expose their lies, but because you did something they never thought possible. You survived. You outlasted the very situations that were designed to crush you. And now, the thought that you were chosen this whole time, that's the nightmare they can't escape. They didn't think you'd make it through. They expected your silence to be permanent, your absence to mean defeat. They thought isolation would erase you from the equation completely. But instead of folding, you stood firm. You endured without applause. You moved forward without needing to explain. You healed without broadcasting your scars. And that's the kind of strength that echoes in their mind long after the performance is over. No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. Isaiah 54:17. Let's talk about Demi Lovato for a moment. The media tried to define her by her struggles. She was mocked, doubted, and dismissed at the height of her breakdown. But she didn't stay there. She rose, raw, vocal, powerful, not with a need for validation, but with undeniable evolution. Her recovery didn't haunt her critics because it was loud. It haunted them because it was real. And that's what you did, chosen one. You didn't retaliate. You resurrected. You didn't fight to be seen. You walked away and let your alignment make the noise. And now the people who bet on your downfall are choking on the silence you left behind. Because chosen ones don't clap back. They become the consequence. Let's be honest. Did you think your endurance would go unnoticed? Did you believe that just because they didn't say your name, they didn't feel your presence? That's where you got it wrong. You stopped showing up in the physical. But your energy never left the room. You didn't need the title, the platform, or the status. You had something more powerful. Conviction. And conviction doesn't need credentials. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Psalm 23:4. Think of Malala Yousafzai, a young girl whose voice threatened an entire regime. They tried to silence her permanently, but even after facing the bullet, she returned stronger, not in bitterness but in purpose. Her survival alone was the message, and the same is true for you. They don't talk about you because they forgot you. They stay silent because they remember and can't face it. You see, your existence is their unfinished sentence. Your presence is the mirror they can't look into. They thought your fall would prove their point, that your silence would validate their lies. But instead, you've become the reflection they can't avoid. Every time your name rises, it presses a bruise they hoped would heal without accountability. Have you ever noticed how their tone shifts when your truth is brought up? How suddenly their laughter fades, how their face stiffens? That's not coincidence. That's memory. That's conviction. Not yours. Theirs. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. Consider Robert Downey Jr., once mocked, labeled, and thrown out of the industry. He was the cautionary tale until he became the comeback nobody saw coming. The industry that turned its back was forced to open its arms. Not because he begged, but because he transformed. And transformation, chosen one, is what makes your presence now so threatening. They saw who you were at your lowest. They never imagined who you'd become at your highest. Let's check your spirit for a moment. Are you still wondering why they didn't clap for you? Why your warning fell on deaf ears? Why your energy was too much for those around you? The answer is simple. You weren't made to entertain them. You were sent to expose the imbalance. And people don't fear being corrected. They fear being seen. You saw them. That's what they'll never forgive you for. You saw past the filtered kindness, past the forced smiles, past the carefully curated performances. You didn't need to call them out. Your clarity was loud enough. You exposed what they worked so hard to keep hidden. And when light walks into a room full of shadows, the shadows panic. Not because the light says anything, but because it reveals everything. And now, the ones who said you were too much, too intense, too emotional, they're dealing with the fallout of what they tried to bury under performance. Their rehearsed empathy, their fake peace, their borrowed personalities. None of it can stand up to the reality you carry. You didn't say much, but you saw too much. And that's what they fear the most. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. 2 Timothy 1:7. Take Keanu Reeves, one of Hollywood's most enigmatic figures. He doesn't chase attention. He doesn't scream for relevance. He moves with calm, quiet authenticity. But behind the scenes, he's endured immense grief, betrayal, and loss. Still, his presence commands respect. Why? Because he carries energy that can't be manufactured. That's your spirit. You were never meant to compete. You were meant to confirm. So, chosen one, let this sink in. You were chosen, not selected for show, but separated for purpose. And no, you weren't sent to make people comfortable. You were sent to disrupt what could no longer stay hidden. That's why your truth haunts them. That's why your presence lingers. That's why even your silence feels like a sermon. You don't have to remind them of what they did. Life's already doing that work. You don't need to seek closure. The consequences are already knocking, and no matter how far they try to run, they'll always be reminded of the one thing they can't delete: your alignment. Because that's the truth. You didn't haunt them with vengeance. You haunted them with existence. So why are you still shrinking? Why are you still wondering if you're too much? Why are you watering yourself down to make space for people who couldn't even carry your truth without flinching? Let me remind you, you don't need to be palatable. You need to be present. And your presence doesn't need to be explained. It needs to be owned. You are the echo. You are the consequence. You are the alignment that outlived every lie thrown your way. And no, they won't tell the truth. Not in public. Maybe not even to themselves. But every time they hear your name, every time someone mentions your evolution, every time your silence walks into the room before you do, they'll remember. Not because you demanded it, but because your existence does. You were chosen, and that's not a title to wear. It's a frequency to carry. You don't carry revenge. You carry revelation. You don't walk in bitterness. You walk in confirmation. You don't need to scream. Your presence is the sermon, so let them sit with what they did. Let the silence grow loud. Let the weight of your survival collapse the illusions they built to feel safe. Because you didn't break, you became the reminder. Number 6. Their masks are melting, and you're the heat they blamed. Chosen one, they're squirming now. Not because you exposed them with words, but because you carried something into the room that didn't match their performance, authenticity. You didn't need to point fingers. You didn't need to shout, accuse, or prove a thing. You just showed up real, and that alone began to unravel the masks they'd spent years perfecting. They're melting now, reputations dripping like wax, carefully crafted personas collapsing under the weight of truth. And guess who they're blaming? You. But let's set the record straight. You weren't the fire. You were the light. You didn't come to destroy. You came to reveal. and the truth they tried to bury couldn't survive the brightness you brought into the room. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. John 1:5. You didn't walk in hoping to cause a scene. You walked in aligned, grounded, discerning, clean. And because your energy didn't bend to their power plays, their false kindness, or their staged loyalty, it made them sweat. You asked honest questions. You moved with spiritual sensitivity. You saw through the cracks in the performance. And instead of owning the act, they turned the lights on you. They flipped the script, didn't they? Called you too much, accused you of reading too deeply into things, said you were looking for drama. But the truth, they knew you were right. They just couldn't admit it, because that would mean admitting that everything they built was a stage, that their character was a costume, that their kindness was camouflage. And now that the heat has been turned up, now that life itself is demanding transparency, the wax is melting and the masks are sliding. For there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. Luke 8:17. Let's take a moment to consider Ellen Pao, former CEO of Reddit, who tried to bring truth to a culture of toxicity and misogyny in Silicon Valley. Instead of being applauded for her clarity and strength, she was vilified, blamed, painted as the problem. But in time, the culture she exposed began to publicly crack. Headlines changed, conversations shifted. The same fire she was blamed for bringing became the light that revealed what could no longer stay hidden. That's what's happening in your world, chosen one. You're being blamed for a fire you didn't start. All you did was enter a room with your soul intact, your motives clean, your integrity untouchable, and it rattled the entire atmosphere, because people who have something to hide will always accuse the truth of being too bright. So here's the question. Why were they so quick to label you the villain? Why did your peace bother them more than their own deception? Because you couldn't be controlled. Because your silence held more conviction than their words. Because you were never playing a role, and that scared them. You didn't speak to perform. You spoke to reveal. You weren't trying to impress. You were trying to stay aligned. They needed someone to blame for the collapse, and who better than the one person who never clapped for their act? You were the one who didn't join the gossip, the one who didn't pretend to be impressed by their influence, and the one who didn't play the part they assigned to you. And when the lights began to flicker, they couldn't hold the scene anymore. Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out. Proverbs 10:9. Look at Brandon Teena, whose story tragically highlighted how truth, identity and light can threaten entire communities living in denial. Brandon wasn't trying to cause chaos, just trying to live in truth. But the culture around him couldn't handle it. They needed him gone so their illusion could stay intact. And yet, decades later, his name remains a symbol of courage, while those who tried to erase him are buried under shame. His truth lived longer than their hate. Chosen one, that's your story too. You didn't bring chaos. You brought clarity. You weren't fighting people. You were standing in principle. And when people build their identities on illusion, principle feels like an earthquake. You weren't the one holding matches. You were the one holding a mirror. But in a world of masks, a mirror is more threatening than fire. Let's go deeper. They're flinching now, scrambling, rewriting narratives, deleting posts, distancing themselves from lies they once endorsed. Because the rooms are hotter, the questions are louder, the inconsistencies are obvious, and the people who used to nod in agreement are starting to whisper, "Wait, didn't the chosen one say this already?" You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Let's talk about Taylor Swift, who for years was mocked for her emotional honesty, her openness, her voice. They said she was petty, dramatic, seeking attention. But over time, the truth she carried outlived the ridicule. The songs they laughed at became cultural anthems. The vulnerability they mocked became a brand of bravery. She didn't fight louder, she aligned deeper. And now, even her critics sing her words. You weren't sent here to be liked. You were sent here to illuminate. And now that the temperature has risen, now that truth is no longer optional, their carefully constructed images are melting like wax. What they rehearsed cannot survive what you carry, and it's driving them into silence, not peace, shame. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been blamed for something just because you didn't participate in the lie? That's the cost of alignment. You'll always be too intense for people who live in pretense. You'll always be the problem when the room depends on illusion to function. But don't doubt yourself. The discomfort you caused was not destruction. It was detox. The light you brought didn't burn them. The lie they lived in did. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. Proverbs 11:3. Consider Sharon Watkins, the Enron whistleblower. She didn't scream. She didn't grandstand. She told the truth. And in doing so, she exposed one of the greatest corporate frauds in history. She was vilified, sidelined, targeted. But in the end, the entire system collapsed, and her truth was the spark that lit the path to justice. And now, chosen one, you're in that same position. You didn't demand destruction. You didn't want collapse. You simply didn't agree to participate in the lie. And that was enough to set the unraveling in motion. Their roles are slipping, their allies are retreating, their credibility is dissolving. And your name? It's not being dragged anymore, it's being remembered. So let this be your reminder. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to fight fire with fire. You just need to keep walking in clarity. Because clarity can't be undone. It can be denied, but not erased. They tried to erase your influence, but they can't erase your impact. They tried to make you the problem, but now they're standing in a mess they created, and the mask won't stick anymore. You were never the fire. You were the sunrise, and they were the ones trying to pretend it was still midnight. So let them melt. Let the wax drip. Let the truth scorch every illusion they wrapped around your name. You don't need revenge. You don't need retribution. You have something more powerful, alignment. And alignment always outlasts appearance. They wore wax faces in a world that was always going to demand fire. And now the sun is up. And the truth, it's blistering. Number 7. They gathered against you and still lost the battle they started. Chosen one, let's talk about what they thought would destroy you and what actually did them in. They gathered, they whispered, they plotted, they grouped up in circles behind your back and moved as if their unity would guarantee your defeat. They were loud, they were proud. They thought the power was in their numbers, but here's the truth they never calculated. You weren't standing alone, you were standing aligned. And no number of people can outvote divine alignment. Let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why people feel safer coming against you in groups? Why they almost never move in isolation? It's because you intimidate them, not with your voice, but with your vibration. You didn't try to match their chaos. You didn't try to compete. You stood in your truth, and that stillness unnerved them more than any attack could. Though they plot evil against you and devise wicked schemes, they cannot succeed. Psalm 21:11. Remember Rosa Parks, one woman on a bus aligned with truth and courage who disrupted an entire system of inequality. The laws, the structures, the people who gathered to maintain oppression, they all thought she would fold. But her stillness that day wasn't weakness. It was divine protest. And her quiet refusal to move sparked a nationwide shift. That's the kind of force you carry. You were never designed to follow the crowd. You were called to confront it, not by fighting back with fists, but by standing firm in who you are. And when people see someone who won't fold to their pressure, who doesn't seek their approval, who won't blend just to belong, they panic. They mistook noise for strength. They thought if they gathered enough people to repeat the same lie, it would somehow become reality. But the universe doesn't respond to echo chambers. It responds to frequency. And the frequency you carry isn't driven by popularity. It's driven by purpose. They clapped for each other, didn't they? Reinforced their narratives in group chats, in meetings, in whispered conversations. They hoped the volume would drown you out. But now, the same crowd that once mocked you is in disarray. The alliance that stood against you is splintered. Why? Because the glue that held them together was fake. Their unity was built on ego, not integrity, and ego always eats itself. They will fight against you, but will not overcome you, for I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord. Jeremiah 1:19. Think about Edward Snowden, who stood alone against an international intelligence community. They branded him a traitor, tried to erase him. Governments, media empires, and even former allies turned their backs. But what remained? Truth. And over time, the same people who condemned him began to see the cracks in their own systems. One aligned man against a world of noise, and truth outlasted all the shouting. So, chosen one, why are you still questioning your strength just because they moved in a pack? Why do you think the crowd knows more than your creator? The size of the opposition never determines the outcome. The substance of your foundation does. And your foundation is not of this world. You didn't gather a group to fight back. You didn't assemble a counterattack. You let the truth defend itself, because you understood something they never did. Destiny isn't a democracy. You don't need a majority when you have divine momentum. You don't need public support when you have prophetic alignment. If God is for us, who can be against us? Romans 8:31. Look at Katherine Johnson, the NASA mathematician who quietly helped launch rockets into orbit while being denied a seat at the table because of her race and gender. She was underestimated, excluded, and overlooked. But the calculation she made, alone, in silence, in excellence, were what carried astronauts safely to space and back. Her math didn't need applause. It just needed time. And now, the very people who shut her out must acknowledge the foundation she laid. Let's go deeper. They gathered because they thought they could outvote your calling. But your anointing isn't up for public opinion. The power you carry doesn't come from consensus. It comes from conviction. You weren't designed to compete for attention. You were designed to disrupt patterns. So now they're scattered, confused, quiet. Because when the noise dies down and the echo fades, what's left? The outcome. And the outcome is this. They lost a battle they started. They fired first. They assembled early. They moved with intention, and still they lost. Why? Because alignment always wins in the long run. Always. They couldn't absorb you into their culture of compromise. They couldn't bait you into a war of words, and they couldn't dim you with distractions. So now the very battle they began has turned on them. And you? You're walking through the fire untouched, because you were never in it alone. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Let's reflect on Malcolm X, who stood firmly in what he believed, even when surrounded by resistance, betrayal, and eventual tragedy. He was outnumbered, criticized, even by those who once walked beside him. But his alignment to truth, not popularity, made his voice echo for generations beyond his lifetime. They may have gathered to silence him, but in doing so, they amplified the message he carried. And that's what's happening for you. The more they tried to discredit you, the more people started to notice the cracks in their story. The more they tried to bury your name, the more your energy began rising in rooms you never even stepped into. You didn't need to retaliate. Your resilience did the work. Let's be real. You didn't expect the crowd to turn, did you? You didn't expect people you trusted to switch up once the pressure came. But here's the truth. Those who joined the mob against you revealed themselves early, so they wouldn't have to watch you rise later. Their betrayal wasn't your downfall, it was your release. You were the mirror, and mirrors are dangerous in rooms full of illusions. So what now? You keep walking, you keep rising. Let them keep counting heads, checking polls, and manipulating narratives. The numbers never mattered. The spotlight they tried to keep you out of. You became the glow they couldn't contain. They lost, not because you fought harder, but because you refused to become what they were. That's the real victory. You stayed you. And now the structure they built against you is falling apart, one ego at a time. So let them remember this. Truth doesn't need a crowd. It just needs someone bold enough to carry it. Someone chosen, called, and covered. That someone is you. Number 8. Let karma cook. You don't have to watch. Chosen one, it's time to release what never belonged in your hands to begin with. You've done the work. You held the line. You stayed quiet when the crowd wanted you loud. You stood still when the noise told you to run. And you kept your integrity while they played games behind the scenes. Now it's their turn to sit in the fire they built, and you don't need a front row seat to watch it unfold. Let karma cook. You don't have to watch. And no, you're not missing the show. Because let's be honest, you were the reason it started. You were the trigger that exposed the truth, the presence that made the masks itch, the quiet clarity that disrupted their performance. Without you, their schemes wouldn't have been tested. Without your refusal to retaliate, the system wouldn't have recalibrated. Do not say, "I will repay evil." Wait for the Lord, and he will deliver you. Proverbs 20:22. Let me ask you something. Why waste your peace watching a fire you didn't start? Why spend your energy checking for outcomes when you already walked away with victory in your spirit? They betrayed you, yes. They lied, gossiped, smiled to your face, and stabbed your name in backrooms. But every ounce of what they did was seen. You don't need to explain a thing. The universe already took notes. Heaven already handed over the blueprint. Think of Amanda Bynes, once ridiculed, mocked, and reduced to a punchline by an industry that used her but never protected her. While the world laughed, she collapsed privately. But healing came, slowly, quietly. And the same people who mocked her, they now sit silent. You don't have to witness every turnaround to know that justice comes. Not always loudly, but always completely. And chosen one, let's get real. You've already seen enough. You felt it in your bones. Every lie, every fake handshake, every moment someone pretended not to know what they did, you carried it with dignity. And now that karma's knocking on doors you no longer live near, let it knock. Let it walk in. Let it rearrange everything. But don't you waste your priceless attention looking backward. The Lord is just. He is my rock, and there is no unrighteousness in him. Psalm 92:15. Look at Corey Feldman, who for years spoke out against abuse in Hollywood. People rolled their eyes, they dismissed him. But time began to validate every word. Those who stayed silent started to squirm. Headlines began to shift. The truth didn't explode, it simmered. And when it rose undeniable, just like what's unfolding for you, slowly, loudly, on divine time. They thought your silence was weakness, that your lack of retaliation meant you had nothing to say. But what they didn't realize is that your silence was strategic. You didn't stay quiet because you were helpless. You stayed quiet because you knew heaven speaks louder when you step back. And now the silence they laughed at has become the sermon. The stillness they mocked has become their storm. For it is written, "It is mine to avenge, I will repay," says the Lord. Romans 12:19. Let's pause here. Have you ever felt tempted to check if karma has finally arrived? That itch to see if justice is being served? That's not weakness, it's human. But chosen ones aren't just human vessels. You're spiritual systems, carrying divine assignments. You weren't designed to sit in bitterness. You were designed to build through it. Every moment you look back steals energy from what you're constructing now. So let them scramble. Let them post through the pain. Let them pretend the fire isn't reaching their comfort zones. You don't need to be there to know it's real, the same way you felt every slight in your spirit. Now they're feeling every echo of consequence in theirs. And the most poetic part, you didn't wish this on them. You didn't call for revenge. You called for peace. You wanted to move on. You wanted understanding, not judgment, clarity, not chaos. But they chose the game. And karma is just finishing the scoreboard. The righteous will be remembered forever. They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord. Psalm 112, verses 6 through 7. Think about Shannon Doherty, a woman who, for decades, was painted as difficult in the entertainment world, cast aside, ridiculed, whispered about. But she held her peace. She kept walking through her storms with grace. And now the narrative is changing. Her strength in the face of cancer, betrayal, and media distortion has redefined her legacy. And the same will be said about you. They tried to define you by the fire, but you became the phoenix instead. So why are you still checking for updates on people you've already outgrown? Why are you still wondering if they've gotten theirs? That's not your path. That's not your prize. Your growth is your justice. Your evolution is your evidence. You didn't escape the fire. You outgrew the battlefield. You've graduated. And once you've graduated, you don't go back to monitor the detention room. Let karma do the cleanup. You're not needed in that room anymore. Your time is too expensive. Your peace is too valuable. Your purpose is too massive. They wanted you bitter, but you're too busy building. They wanted you distracted, but you're designing destiny. They wanted you obsessed with being proven right, but the universe already ruled in your favor. And now, your absence is the consequence. Your silence is the reminder. Your focus is the fallout. Let's go even deeper. Do you realize the very people who plotted your downfall now dread your name? Not because you're loud, but because your life keeps confirming the truth they tried to erase. Every time someone mentions your success, they remember their betrayal. Every time your energy enters a room, they feel the chill of their own conscience. You don't have to clap back. You don't have to clear your name. You just have to keep building, keep rising, keep becoming what they said you'd never be, whole, healed, unbothered. Because the truth is, you're not just surviving. You're thriving without them. You were the one they underestimated, the one they slandered, mocked, excluded. And yet, here you are, still ascending. You're not waiting on karma. You were the catalyst. So now, let karma cook. Let it simmer slowly in the silence. Let it rise like steam over their false narratives. Let it unfold in rooms you'll never need to visit again. Because when you're truly aligned, you don't chase retribution. You become untouchable. Number 9. They should have left you alone. Now, the universe won't leave them alone. Chosen one, they had a choice, a moment, a signal, a divine warning that told them, quietly but clearly, back off. But they didn't listen. They ignored the shift in your energy, the change in your tone, the silence in your spirit. They saw you moving differently and took it as an opportunity to provoke. And now they've poked something they can't fight, touched something they can't explain, and the very force they were toying with is unraveling everything they built. They should have left you alone, not because you're dangerous, not because you're vengeful, but because you were carrying something far greater than yourself: alignment. When they targeted you, they weren't just targeting a person. They were interfering with divine order. They were poking at a purpose that didn't originate from this world. And the universe doesn't forget that. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and he who rolls a stone, it will come back on him. Proverbs 26:27. Let's ask the question no one around them is brave enough to ask. Why couldn't they leave you alone? Why did your presence unsettle them so much that they had to mock it, challenge it, twist it? Was it really about you, or was it about what you carried? They didn't realize you were a signal, not just a soul, a disruption, not a distraction, a mirror, not a threat. And when someone carries that kind of clarity, it will always rattle what is false. Look at Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, who came forward in truth and vulnerability. She didn't scream, she didn't attack, she simply revealed what had been hidden, and the backlash was immense. People mocked her, tried to discredit her, erase her, but what she carried into that courtroom wasn't just words, it was conviction. And years later, the echoes of that truth still reverberate, while the credibility of those who mocked her has crumbled. That's you. You didn't start the storm. You simply stood in alignment, and the storm revealed itself. They thought they were just challenging a person. What they were really doing was interfering with the balance of a divine equation. You weren't just passing through their space. You were sent to correct it. Touch not my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm. 1 Chronicles 16:22. Let's go deeper. They threw stones at someone carrying fire, not a fire to destroy, but a fire to clarify, purify, reveal. The type of spiritual fire that doesn't need applause, doesn't need defense, doesn't need vengeance. You showed up carrying what their performance couldn't survive: truth. And when truth enters the room, everything that's fake starts to sweat. They mocked the fire, laughed at the silence, called you dramatic, sensitive, too intense. They confused your boundaries for bitterness, your intuition for instability. But now that same fire they tried to smother is burning through the very systems they tried to use against you. Not because you asked for it, but because the universe answers energy, not intentions. Have you ever seen someone pretend they're fine while everything around them is falling apart? That's what's happening now. They're trying to hold the mask in place, but the glue is gone. And the truth? It's loud now. It's in their house, in their relationships, in their peace. Every lie they told is returning like a whisper in the dark. Every stone they threw has become a piece of the rubble under their own feet. The Lord is known by his acts of justice. The wicked are ensnared by the work of their hands. Psalm 9:16. Think of Janet Jackson, who bore the brunt of an industry scandal not of her making, silenced, shamed, ostracized while others walked free. But time revealed everything. Years later, the story flipped, and those who tried to erase her were left explaining themselves to a public that had finally seen the truth. She didn't need to shout. Her dignity did the work. And chosen one, that's your story too. You didn't retaliate, you just moved on. And that was enough to break their illusion. You let go of the need to be right, and in doing so, the truth rose in your absence. You outgrew the war they kept trying to pull you into. And now, they're haunted, not by what you did, but by how little you had to do, because the consequences are doing all the talking. Have you noticed how quiet they've gone? How the ones who were once loud about you now avoid your name? That's not peace, that's pressure. That's karma arriving like a wind they can't hold back. And the irony? They thought it would come quickly, but universal justice doesn't rush. It waits. And when it moves, it doesn't miss. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever one sows, that will he also reap. Galatians 6:7. Let's talk about Colin Kaepernick, vilified for kneeling in silent protest, labeled divisive, unpatriotic, dramatic. But he stayed still. He stayed silent, and while the world mocked, the truth simmered. Years later, the conversations he tried to start are now mainstream. The outrage faded, but the alignment remains, and those who came against him are now facing the very scrutiny they tried to throw on him. Chosen one, your presence did what your words never had to. You didn't scream, you didn't curse, you didn't post your pain for applause. You simply held the line, and in doing so, you let divine timing do its perfect work. And now the full circle has arrived. Everything they thought they buried is rising. Every seed they planted in arrogance is blooming into consequence. Every closed-door meeting, every smear campaign, every fake concern is being played back to them. Not by you, but by life itself. You don't have to say a word. You don't need to post a thread. You don't need to confront anyone. Your absence is their alarm. Your elevation is the echo. Your peace is the prophecy fulfilled. They tried to fight a person, but they were fighting order. They were tampering with protection. They tried to sabotage a frequency that didn't belong to them. And the universe, it doesn't take that lightly. Let me ask you one final question. Do you still feel tempted to prove a point? If so, pause. Because the point has already been made. Your life has spoken volumes. Your peace has shattered pretense. And now the same ones who swore you were the problem are quietly trying to recover from the exposure. You don't need to revisit the battlefield. The war is over, and you won. They should have left you alone. Now the universe won't leave them alone. Beloved chosen one, you didn't just survive, you outlasted the storm they created. You didn't fight dirty, you didn't play the game. You simply stood in alignment while the chaos tried to bend you. And that endurance, that unshakable grace, is what shook the very foundation of what was built to break you. Let that be your closure. Let that be your confirmation. You were never outnumbered. You were covered. You were never silenced. You were refined. If this message hit your spirit, I want to thank you deeply for being here, for walking this path with resilience and open eyes. Your presence in this space is not taken lightly, and if you feel led, consider supporting this message by clicking the super thanks below. Every donation helps continue to deliver truth to those who need it. But even if you don't give a penny, know this: I'm beyond grateful just to have you listening, growing, and walking in your divine alignment. Now, do one last thing before you go. Share this with someone you know is walking through the fire, who thinks their silence is weakness, who's doubting whether they'll make it out. Let them know they're not losing their mind. They're chosen. And their silence, it still echoes. May you be blessed with clarity, protected by divine timing, and surrounded by peace that no storm can interrupt. Keep rising, keep shining. You are proof that truth never folds.